particularly in times of drought. Egypt is worried about the effect on the Aswan Dam. An international team of scientists has a solution, but it's not been taken up.
Imagine standing before a massive wall of water, 170 meters high, stretching almost 2 kilometers across. Water thundering down, mist rising into the air, and history literally being written in front of you. This is the story about the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Africa's largest hydroelectric dam, a project, by the way, that has taken over a decade, billions of dollars, and the determination of an entire nation to actually complete. Now, here's the thing. This particular dam isn't just about electricity. It's about power, literally, and symbolic power for a people who have refused to bow to centuries of exploitation and control. But as this dam lights up Ethiopia, it's also sparking tension with Egypt and Sudan. And I want us to talk about what this actually means for Africa, for Black sovereignty, and for our future as a global Black community, because these are conversations that must be had. You see, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, also known as the GERD, it's been under construction since 2011. So over 25,000 workers came together to build what is now not just the largest dam in Africa, but one of the 20 largest hydroelectric dams in the entire world. And that's massive. This dam will generate over 5,000 megawatts of power. That's more than double Ethiopia's previous capacity, and it has the potential to electrify the entire Horn of Africa region. And here's what makes this story so powerful. Ethiopia paid for 91% of this project by themselves. By themselves, no borrowing. And this was with contributions from everyday Ethiopians through bonds and through donations. In a world where Africa is often dependent on foreign loans, foreign aids, IMF handouts, we've spoken about this before. But Ethiopia said no, we will do this by ourselves, and they were able to pay 91% of the funds. But of course, not everyone is celebrating. Egypt has been the loudest critic of this project, calling it an existential threat. Why? Because the Nile provides 97% of Egypt's water supply, and they fear that Ethiopia's dam will reduce the water flow, especially during times of drought. Now, family, this is where I want us to actually step back for a moment and see the bigger picture, right? The Nile River has always been a lifeline, but let's not forget, it was also a tool of control during colonial times. Treaties signed under British colonial rule favored Egypt and Sudan, leaving Ethiopia the source of 85% of the Nile's water with very little say over its own resources. So what does Ethiopia's Renaissance Dam actually represent? It represents the breaking of old chains. It's Africa saying, we will no longer be told how to use what God placed in our land. We're not going to do that again. Now, let me ask you, don't you think it's time for African nations to be the ones actually making decisions about Africa's resources? Don't you think that we actually deserve to power our own homes, to run our own industries, and to light up our own future without having to beg or bargain with former colonizers or even anyone else? Now, the tensions are high, and I do understand. Egypt has been strengthening ties with Eritrea and Somalia, even though Somalia's president was right there at the dam's inauguration, standing with Ethiopia. Sudan is demanding legally binding agreements as well. So there are several layers to this particular story that is still developing. But here's the truth. This doesn't have to be a story about division, right? This can be a story about cooperation, about Africa finally using her resources for Africa, which is what the goal should be in the first place. If Ethiopia can successfully operate this dam without significantly harming downstream countries, and so far, research actually shows that they have carefully managed the filling to avoid disruptions, then this could actually be a blueprint for what it looks like when African nations build, innovate, and collaborate on their own terms. But what do you think about this? Because like I mentioned, it's quite controversial and there's several layers to it. Should Africa prioritize development even when others fear that it will change the balance of power, just like in this case? You see, this dam, it's called the Renaissance Dam for a reason, right? Renaissance means rebirth. And that's exactly what we're witnessing. The rebirth of African ambition, African innovation, and African pride. You know, for too long, Africa's story has been told through the lens of poverty, crisis, dependence, you name it. Today, Ethiopia is telling a different story, right? One of strength, sovereignty, self-determination, and I love to see it. And to every African watching this, whether you're on the continent or you're in the diaspora, if you're African descent as well, I want you to remember this. We're not powerless, right? We're not voiceless. We're not waiting for permission. Not anymore. The tides are changing, and you can see that through countries like Ethiopia, we're building, we're rising, and we're lighting up our future, literally, right? But what lessons do you think other African nations can actually learn from Ethiopia's example? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. I would love to get your take on this. I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? My name is Ify Igwe, reporting from Nigeria's African Diaspora News Channel. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. See you on the next story.